Here we are. Welcome to phase 3. This is what I call the building phase. So we've been through the first two, learning and improving. Now we're going to start actually creating stuff. So what we do in this phase is begin the process of building new assets. So pages, blog posts, content, whatever you want to call it, on the website to capture more keyword rankings and traffic. I think where a lot of marketers get tripped up here is they only think about blog posts. But as you saw in the previous model, there's different levels of intent with different keywords. We want to make sure that we're hitting all those, and different levels of intent map to different types of content, different pages, different mediums, whether that's video, blog posts, resource guides, or even multimedia or social media content. So we want to keep that all in consideration when we're going through this process, because we want to hit all corners of the market when we're creating stuff. So specifically within this campaign building process, I'm going to cover 4 things. Number 1 is a content audit. Number 2 is a keyword gap analysis. 3 is a content strategy. 4 is new topic ideation, and 5 is content management. So I misspoke. It's actually 5 things we're going to cover here. Very exciting. Extra little bonus stuff for you. So this kicks off with a content audit. And the reason why we do this, and this is something that I developed years ago, because what I found was, specifically when working with client websites, was they had a lot of garbage on their website. Just blog posts, resource guides that did not necessarily map to where we wanted to go. And what happens is you can hurt the performance of your website by cannibalizing keywords. A content audit helps us to take inventory of everything on a website. So starting with that website quality audit and everything that we tagged as content audit, remember that, we want to start to review the content on the website, all the blog posts, resource guides, anything that we're deeming content, right? So non-sales pages. So what we want to do here is prune or clean up low quality content, which ideally will pick up the performance of others. So as I mentioned, sites with a lot of low performing pages, low quality pages, don't get the same level of visibility from search, because what happens is Google comes to your website, they're crawling, they're indexing, they're reading, and they're finding a lot of pages that are thin, that are off topic, that are not speaking about what you should be speaking about as a brand. And what happens is over time, they say, this website isn't good quality. I don't want to serve people this experience. So we're going to crawl you less. We're going to index you less. We're going to rank you less. So going through the process of cleaning up these crap pages can help to pick up the performance of the other pages, especially if we're using proper tactics like 301 redirects or content consolidation or content updating, which we'll talk about in a second. And this also is the foundation of all of our content campaigns, which we call the pillar and cluster model. So HubSpot talks about hub and spoke models. This is kind of a bigger play on that, but it's basically a system to organize content and provide a framework for scalable content creation that helps you stay within your lane. So it keeps you talking about the things that your brand should be talking about. Anything outside of that, you shouldn't be talking about it. And this is a model that helps you do that. So specifically, getting back into the case study, when we ran this content audit, we found major issues with cannibalization. So as you've probably discovered, decarboxylation is a very, very big, complicated topic. And the client thought that they had to create a lot of different posts around that to explain it in different facets. But what happens is you end up creating content that targets the same keyword. When you have content targeting the same keyword, Google doesn't know which page to rank, and it's not going to rank any of them, right? So we want to identify those and remove that keyword cannibalization. So we do that by running this content audit, understanding which pages they have, understanding the performance of these pages, and then looking at them and making a decision about what we want to do with them. Do we want to update them? Do we want to merge them? Do we want to just delete them completely? Do we want to redirect them into another page? So what we decided to do was redirect a lot of the lower quality performers that were too thin, under 400 words, no images, that were really just built at that time to try and build more context around the keywords. And we wanted to consolidate these into just a series of massive pillar posts, right? You hear Brian Dean talking about these pillar pages. What we want to do is we want to create those, especially around these big competitive keywords. So things like, what is decarboxylation? A guide that talks just specifically what is about decarb. What are the benefits of decarboxylation? How do you decarboxylate at home? We wanted to hit these main buckets of keywords that all had different levels of intent and hyper-target our content around those keywords to better focus that, and then redirect all the other pages into these to clean up and just make the site only cover those topics in depth, the ones that we should be ranking for. So of course, there is a full content audit within the blueprint. You guys can check it on the website. It's a standalone module. It talks about all this stuff in detail, plus the full template, all the ways to aggregate the data, all that fun stuff. So now that we've taken an inventory of everything on the website and decided how to handle it, now we want to start to look for new keywords to build content around. So previously, I talked about keyword research for existing pages. That's going through and it's looking at improving the performance of the pages they already have. But how do we scale and hit new keywords? Well, we run a keyword gap analysis. So what this does is it finds keyword gaps on your website in relation to your competitors in the market. So pulling down data from Ahrefs or SEMrush, we build a keyword universe of all the content pages that your competitors are ranking around, and then we crosswalk that with the keywords that you are ranking for or not ranking for. And what this does is it presents us with the gaps to build new content and new pages around where you are not ranking where your competitors are. And of course, here's a screenshot of the template. We have this as well. Again, I go into this in detail in the blueprint. You can check it out. But you can see here what it does is it just pulls through the best ranked competitor, the best rank, the number of competitors ranking, and then where your site is in relation to that. And then pulls through the keyword rankings of each one of your competitors at the keyword level. So you can get a clear picture here of a file to start building content topics around for where you are not getting any visibility, to come up with new content topic ideas. So with this in hand, we can now push into building a content strategy. So again, this is not fluff here. Strategy is incredibly important, especially when you're working with a client site where you don't really know the field that well. You have to do the research and put in the time and effort. So using the audit and the gap analysis, now we can start to generate new topic ideas. And again, these don't only have to be blog posts. We got to think a little bit more creatively here. And depending on the search intent, it could be video, it could be social content, it could even be new landing pages. And the easy way to test that is to take a keyword and Google it and find out what Google is ranking for that keyword. So if it's like a how to decarboxylate, you take that and you put that into Google and see what ranks. Generally, it's going to be a lot of videos, because the intent behind a how-to keyword is something more of a video based, right? Somebody that wants to see that happening. So what you want to do is you want to map that to a video. We still want to do a blog post for it for sure, but if we really want to scrape the SERPs for all the real estate that we possibly can, the video is the best way to go. Put that on YouTube. So for client-facing stuff too, it's always really important to formalize these things with a deck. That deck, of course, we have a template for you that goes into the research, audience personas. This is really, really important. We don't talk enough about audience personas in SEO and especially content marketing, but this really helps us keep hyper-focused on things like content tone, content length. You know what I'm saying? Like, people automatically assume that you have to create these long guides, but if that's not what your audience likes to read, you know, I look at the difference between like myself and my father and how we consume content, the type of content we like to consume, and where we consume that content. And it's drastically different, right? So you want to make sure that you're dictating that in your audience personas to who you're speaking to, and you're not just creating blanket content for people. That's just not going to perform that well because the audience doesn't want to see that. So what you're looking at here is this is our template to create content topics and to organize it. We eventually push this into content calendar, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's also got a tab down the bottom for personas. Let me just pull this open and show it to you so you can get a clear picture of this. So what you're looking at here is a means for us to organize and build these content topics, which I'm going to go into in detail in a second. I just want to show you how you organize this and stay on top of it. So we've got the topic, the main keyword, the pillar and cluster, which again, I'm going to talk about more in a second. The journey stage, so this maps to what part intent that has, the type of content. Is it a blog post? Is it a video? Is it a resource guide? Is it a landing page? The content tactic, and again, we go into this in detail in the blueprint, like an expert guide versus a roundup versus a webinar versus a white paper, a new or rewrite. So this pulls in from the content audit. So for example, if you've got old stuff that you need to rewrite, you pull that in through here. Going into the keywords, the structure and supporting information, the competition, estimated traffic, references, and then an outline, which of course we want to put together an outline in detail, which I'll talk about in a second. This again pushes into a content calendar, which we use to feed into our content creation process. And these are the personas that I was talking about. So going through and taking the time to build these out. I've got a blog post on our website. I'll link to it where it shows you how we build these out and where we get this data from. Of course, we do that in the blueprint as well. It's all laid out for you, get all this stuff. But this is what you need to do to really put together an effective content creation campaign for a client. And then you can bulk this into a deck, which again, we give you in the blueprint, which just goes into all the stuff that we talked about here, the content types that we talked about, blog posts, wikis, long video, gated content. Just explains to them all this stuff that's done for you so you don't have to. So let's keep chugging along. I want to get into a little bit more nitty gritty here with the content marketing process. So the first thing I like to do, as I said, is develop these audience personas. It's really, really important to know who we're speaking to, how we're going to speak to them, and how we're going to reach them ultimately in terms of what medium and what platform these should live on. Number two is to migrate the low-hanging fruit from the content audit. So we want to start, before you even start coming up with new topic ideas, use the assets that you already have. It's all, like, in case you haven't noticed already, we want to try and make things as easy as possible to get the most output as possible with the least input as possible. And that starts with taking the assets that a website already has, ones that we want to refresh, rewrite, or merge, and push those into our content tracking file, and then do a little bit of extra work to put in the keywords and to outline what those new articles should look like. After that, we want to create the topics for content creation. So we do this using a number of tactics. So number one, of course, is, as I said, taking the rewrite, refresh, merge pages from the content audit. Number two is to niche up from bottom funnel keywords. So for example, if for this client, the bottom funnel keyword would be buy decarboxylator, then we're saying, okay, before somebody's ready to buy a decarboxylation machine, what is it that they're searching for? So it could be things like how to decarboxylate at home, what is decarboxylation, What are the benefits? Like all the things I already said. I apologize for beating a dead horse here, but it's because I already went through it. But these are the things that people are searching for before they're ready to buy a decarboxylation machine, or before they even know it exists, right? So if we can capture them upstream like this, we can easily push them down funnel and convert them. And number 3 is to use the keyword gap analysis. So using those gaps in the keywords that are not on your website, going through and formulating content ideas. And again, I've got a great video on this that I did a couple years ago, actually using SEMrush from my old e-commerce website, Laces Out, that shows you how to group these keywords and basically take multiple keywords and push them into a topic, which you can then push into new pieces of content. So I'll link to that as well for you guys. Then after that, we want to build out the context for the article. So using those tactics that we just talked about, we want to flesh out supporting keywords. So basically just doing a little bit more blown out keyword research, finding those supporting keywords. We also want to identify the pillar and cluster that it lives within. We want to cite the references. So for example, when you're doing this research, when you're doing this gap analysis, if you see a really good article that talks about the benefits of decarboxylation, drop a link in there so the writer who's going to go through this can review that and understand a little bit more context to do some research. And then of course, we want to come up with a content tactic and type. And I talked a little bit about that. I blow that out in the blueprint. I don't want to go into too much detail here, just for the purpose of time, because we've got a lot of material to cover here. But we do want to understand what type of content should it be? Should it be a blog post? Should it be a video? Should it be a webinar? And where should it live? Should it be on your website? Should it be on your YouTube channel? Should it be a guest post? This is something that I'll use a lot of. You've probably seen me do this throughout my career for marketing, is if there's a keyword that I'll just never rank for, but it's a really important content topic that I want to get out there and get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, then I'll submit it as a guest post like Moz or Search Engine Land or something like that to get as many eyeballs and credit for that post as possible. So after that, we want to determine the competition to rank, the traffic potential, and prioritize. So just basically filling out this template that I've laid out for you guys. You know, some topics we have to create no matter how competitive it is, but there's others we want to prioritize based on ease to visibility. So again, especially if you're doing this for a client and you're being held to results and KPIs, the more traffic we can drive, the sooner the better. So we want to prioritize this content based on 2 things. Number 1, the impact of the business. Like I said, if there's certain topics like decarboxylation guide that we have to get on the website, that's important, but it's going to take a long time to rank, that's fine. But if there's other things that we can get to turn around pretty quickly, which I'll show you some topics that I found for this client, we want to prioritize those and get those created first so we can get those live and start getting traffic to them, get the client off your back a little bit. So number 6 here is we want to build that content strategy deck that I just showed you, send the topics to the stakeholder for approval. The deck just summarizes everything. It's a good way to have a kind of a wrap-up call, touch point with the client about their content, let them give feedback, and then you can push into the creation process. So getting back into the specifics of this client, it's really important. Again, if you want to do this at a high level, at an advanced level, and get results for yourself or for clients, you've got to differentiate yourself. You don't want to just do what you see other people doing or because you read on a blog post. You got to put in the time and effort and the thought process, the research to figure out how can you differentiate yourself? How can you stand out? So one of the things that we found is that there's just massive inaccuracies that plague the industry. And this is more than just the content. For example, when I was in Colorado, it's legal there. I went into a shop and I was asking the people about different edibles. Me and my girlfriend were taking a hike in the mountains. We wanted to get a little bit of buzz on and experience nature in a fun way. So we were looking at the labels of these things, and the people were trying to guide us on which edibles had different potencies and stuff. But the point is that, I bought a bottle of this drink, drank the whole thing, felt nothing. I kept on drinking, it felt nothing because essentially that company lied about the THC level in it. And then I got another edible, had a little bite of it, and I couldn't barely breathe. So the point is that the industry is highly unregulated. So there's no one there. There's no brands that are really doing what they claim. There are some, but it's the Wild West. You know what I'm saying? Like the government hasn't really regulated yet. But when this translates to information on the web, especially, people are even worse. People are just making up claims about THC, about all these different things that we saw as a means for us to stand in because we did work with research labs. We did actually test the decarboxylation product in the process, and we figured that we could step in and be a business leader around accurate info. So sites like Leafly crushed it and provided solid information, but they were just kind of like, informational websites. There was no real business behind a lot of these things that was publishing sound information. So we wanted to push that data-driven research case studies around things like THC dosing, strand information, health-related info, anything that we could scientifically verify with the lab partner and the research partner that we had, and then publish that basically as case studies, which I'll show you in a second. But this then pushes into something a little bit more content marketing focus, which is the pillar and cluster model, which is something that we use at our agency. Again, I've got a huge webinar that I just filmed actually when I was up in Philadelphia last week that talks about this pillar and cluster content strategy, how it relates to overarching brand content strategies. But HubSpot, it's got really good articles about hub and spoke. Hub and spoke is basically just SEO content creation, a hub topic, and that would be like, like decarboxylation and the spokes that come off it, which would be basically like the individual posts. We'd like to take that one step further. I like to call it pillar and cluster because a pillar to me is something that's firm, it's in the ground. That pillar is a brand pillar. These are the topics that are core to the business operations. These are things that should map back to your product's functionality, your service functionality, but these are things that your brand should own. And these are really important because this is basically like your brand voice and your brand messaging and your brand positioning when it comes to content and the information that you put out on the web. We want to define these things, right? Especially with Google's algorithm rolled out this past year in 2019, that basically de-indexed and not de-indexed, but de-ranked a lot of pages on websites that were outside of the scope and the expertise, specifically in the health industry, of what these websites should be talking about. Like, for example, if you're a protein vendor and you're making claims about all these different workout things, like it's in health claims about all these different things, like, is that something that you should really be talking about? Is that something that Google wants to rank you for? To me, that would be outside of your brand pillar. You should go back and map and figure out what it is that's a core pillar to your brand. And then from there, you can start to build out clusters, which are the topics and the content mechanisms that support your pillars, right? And this allows you to explore all the possible options. So an Instagram post, a Facebook post, a blog post, a YouTube video, these are the different clusters that can come off of your pillars. But the pillars are things that are core to your brand. So for example, when it came to this client, cannabis usage was something that we figured is a pillar of what this brand should be. So some of the spokes that could come off of that did come off of it, were 6 reasons to decarboxylate your herb before using it. So going after the keywords of decarboxylate herb. Another one was 24 ways to consume marijuana, smoking edibles, and more. So this is just a big keyword here, ways to consume marijuana. So like just going after the general user. And as I mentioned before, we were really trying to go upstream in the market to get to that everyday cannabis user. So here we're using content under the usage pillar. You can see how this maps back to usage, going after that with content. 8 ways to use weed oil. So again, going after the weed oil keyword, huge keyword, all under usage. 12 ways to use cannabis topicals and lotion. So again, cannabis topicals and lotion, another very, very big keyword. And all these things map back to general usage, but they also map back to the brand, because all of these things, weed oil is something that you can get from the decarboxylation machine. Topicals and lotions are things that you can use the decarboxylation machine to make these things out of. Same thing. And then these two are just general kind of like more top funnel type topics, but all these things fall under the usage pillar, which all fall under the pillar of what this brand should and could be talking about. So just to blow this out, because this is a smaller website, again, like I usually like to go for between like 5 to 10 pillars, because this is such a small website, single product. The pillars that I came up with were usage, research, and recipes. So usage, I just showed you those, cannabis alternatives, how to use decarb bud, cannabis extraction methods. These all fall under the usage pillar. And again, you can take this, and what we did is we created a YouTube video, created Instagram posts, we created graphics that we put on like Twitter and Facebook, and then all, of course, blog posts too that were for search volume. Research, cannabis dosing ratios. What are cannabinoids, cannabis oil versus CBD, and all these things. What we did is we committed to a budget to go and get these things researched and tested so we could publish these things, which I'll show you right now in a second. Finally was recipes. So this is much more top funnel, much more viral type traffic, but there's such massive search volume around these things, and all these things too, how to make weed brownies, how to make weed cookies, how to make cannabis milk. All of these things here are direct outputs of the product that they were selling. So ranking for this here, which I'll show you the examples of these articles in a second, and keep in mind the client changed the website, so it kind of looks like shit. It's not what we originally built, but I still want to give you context for what these things look like. And just a quick note too, on the blog, we built these physical category silos on the website. So when you click on one of these, not only does it filter for recipes, but the URL changes for recipes. Not only click this again, the URL changes. So this gives us additional search opportunity to rank for cannabis recipes, cannabis research, cannabis usage guides. All these things that then list out these tiles underneath it are tremendous search opportunities. So just to give you guys some context here, this is a decarboxylation guide. This is one of those big things that we talked about. And again, like, don't look at their traffic, because I just realized this now. They changed the actual URL string here, which crushed their rankings. They didn't redirect it, which is why this page is no longer ranking. But this is just how to decarboxylate at home. That's one of the keywords I said. So you can see here, we actually did a video. We had her in in a studio filming this, how to decarboxylate at home, which we push to YouTube, which is also good for advertising and additional social content. This is just a very basic step-by-step guide, which of course uses, I told them, make sure that we're getting custom photography, make sure that we're showing the product. So we're basically saying like the way to decarb is through using this product. So that's one of the examples there. Here's another one with an infusion guide, same thing here. This is going into talking about some of the testing that we said here. So this is actually a data table pulling from the testing that they had done. Again, they went to a lab and got these things tested, then presented these results. And this again is going after the keywords for infusion, really good stuff. And then let me just show you some of these recipes, some of the older ones that we did here, how to make cannabis ice cream. So this is again, a very basic article here. They actually ripped the video down. We had a video up here that we actually paid an influencer account to do. They've just built a nice little video for us, just shows how to make cannabis ice cream. So this is just some of the things in practice. And again, I apologize because the site does not look like what it used to look like. They made some changes to it after we stopped working together, which is why their traffic is no longer what it was, unfortunately. But the concepts still apply. They just completely lit everything on fire, unfortunately. So I want to wrap up this this phase here by talking about content management. So this is something that I push to clients, especially in consulting all the time, is that we can build you a strategy, we can give you the topics, but execution is king here. Strategy is incredibly important, coming up with all these things and getting to this point, but if you can't get it done, what good is it, right? So content management is a very real thing. It's something that's incredibly important and really not talked about enough in terms of getting things done. So I want to run you through our process a little bit for this. So with these topics created, as I said, it's time to get this done. I just kind of gave you my pitch ahead of this. It's a full-time job though, and personally, I like to outsource a lot of content creation, even for myself. You see me publishing a lot of stuff. This deck, I hired someone and I've been training them hard to help me build these decks. It's all about scaling. It's about getting more and more and more stuff done while maintaining quality. You should really work on building a team. It's better to outsource it. Hiring somebody internally is expensive. If you've got the budget to do it, definitely get somebody in-house. But there's a ton of reasonably priced companies that can write stuff for you for around 100, 200 bucks, whatever. But personally, I pay around $500 per piece of content in B2B because, our clients are worth 10K and up. So $500 to create an asset that they're going to read and ultimately hire us based off of is not really it's kind of a no-brainer investment for me. So there's some amazing writers out there. You just got to look for them. Basically what I like to do and what I did for this company was you just go to the top websites, find articles that you like Leafly. You can see this guy here, this guy Adam, he writes for them. He's a freelance writer. All you got to do is look up his information, send him an email, find out what he costs, and then give him the content calendar that you built, and he can take care of the rest. So the content management process is important. Let's talk about it. So first, you got to build the outlines for articles and it's even some promotional recommendations as well too, because it's not enough to just publish stuff. We want to get visibility on as well. But an outline, what it does is it ensures that all that hard work that you did in keyword research and strategy, it gets translated properly into content. So within the blueprint, I've got tons of templates for you, how to write an expert guide, how to write a curated roundup, and how you can have your SEO strategist or yourself build these outlines, even if you're not a content expert, how to translate the SEO data into outlines that a freelance writer can pick up with no conversation and get it done properly the first time. So after you get that done, we want to move this stuff to a content calendar for creation. We have a full project management system within the blueprint that dictates not only your day-to-day SEO, but your link building and your content marketing as well. It's really just a matter of copying and pasting the content topic template that I showed you before into the content calendar creation, and then boom, you're working at scale. And then ongoing content creation. I'm not going to cover this here, but essentially you just get a project manager or yourself to just make sure that you're staying on top of deadlines, managing the project management system that we gave you, and you'll be good. So that is it for phase 3. In the next video, we're going to be talking about phase 4, which is promotion. We'll be talking about link building, some influencer stuff, some really cool stuff that we did because cannabis is a blacklisted industry. It's very hard to advertise for it. So we're going to talk about the strategies that we did there. So I'll see you in the next video.